you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Qilin, a first-year PhD student at Purdue University. Today, I'm going to present our project, GadgetMeter, an innovative framework to gauge the exploitability of speculative gadgets. This is a joint work with Yujun Liang and Yi Ren from Tsinghua University, Professor Burj Kasiksi from University of Washington, and Professor Shuwen Deng, also from Tsinghua University. Speculative attacks have been a severe threat to all computer systems since 2018. They exploit speculative execution in modern processors, which is a fundamental optimization technique. In general, attackers find snippets of code within a program that are vulnerable to speculative attacks. They exploit these gadgets and steal secret data from the victim program. An effective mitigation strategy is to pinpoint these gadgets within the program and then apply patches to them. However, unnecessary patches can lead to huge performance degradation. Therefore, our goal in this project is to accurately detect specter gadgets that are truly vulnerable in practice. First, let me show you what's a specter gadget. If you look at this piece of code, it simply takes an input from the user, performs a bounce check on that input, and then do two memory accesses based on the user input. This is vulnerable to specter attacks because if the conditional branch takes a long time to execute, the CPU would speculatively execute the two memory accesses, which might access some secret data, and then encode that secret data into some CPU side channels. Later, when the CPU finally figured out that this was a wrong prediction, it would recover all the CPU architecture states. However, the side channel information remains, which allows the attacker to recover the secret later. Many gadget scanners have been proposed to pinpoint these gadgets within arbitrary programs. In general, they emulate branch misprediction at software level, and they try to find a vulnerable information flow that contains an attacker injection, a secret access, and a secret leakage. These are the essential components of a specter attack. However, there's one key missing piece in all prior scanners, which is that they fail to model the timing condition accurately. In fact, there's a race condition in all specter attacks between the branch and the leakage instructions. For the attack to succeed, the attackers must make sure that the leakage instructions happens before the misprediction recovery. Otherwise, the CPU would send a signal to squash all the leakage instructions before they leak the secret. As you can see, satisfying the timing condition is necessary for a gadget to be exploitable. However, existing works model the timing condition pretty badly. Most of them simply approximated with the size of real buffer. Real buffer is basically a key structure in modern processors that allows speculative execution, and the size of it determines the maximum instruction that can be executed speculatively. These scanners simply look at the branch instruction and the secret leakage instruction and check whether they can fit into the real buffer. If that's true, these scanners would just assume that the leakage instructions can happen before the misprediction recovery. However, this approximation is too simple and conservative because instruction timings depend on a lot more factors than the size of real buffer. To avoid these false positives, it's important for us to measure the timing condition accurately in our tool. There's a few other scanners which do model the timing condition. However, they are very restricted in that they either assume no windowing power or very weak windowing power. Here we define windowing power as attackers' capabilities to affect the timing of gadget execution. In fact, if we have an attacker with a much stronger windowing power than we assume, then they might be able to delay the branch resolution a lot, which would make the attack succeed. To avoid these false negatives, we need to consider very strong windowing power when measuring the timing condition in our tool. With these insights, we first present a systematic modeling of windowing power. we see windowing power as a combination of two parts. The first part is windowing capability, which contains all possible techniques for the attacker to affect the timing of gadget execution. Some examples include cache line eviction, division unit contention, and many more. We evaluate them based on their latency effect and their control granularity, and we focus on the most powerful ones. The second part of the windowing power is a windowing strategy, which is basically a searching algorithm for the most effective attack pattern. We evaluate two existing strategies based on their efficiency and their effectiveness, and we notice that neither of them can achieve both efficiency and effectiveness at the same time. Therefore, we propose a new sophisticated strategy that can achieve close to optimal effectiveness while remaining efficient in practice. With this strong windowing power, we then evaluate the exploitability of gadgets based on their timing condition. We propose a three-step method. First, we model the timing condition using a directed acyclic graph. Second, we simulate the windowing power and select an effective attack pattern. Finally, we quantify their exploitability based on the timing condition. Let me show this with an example. This is pretty much the same gadget as before, except that now the index is divided by 4 from the user input. Also, the boundary value is loaded from memory. The conditional branch and the memory accesses are just the same as before. First, we model the timing condition with a directed acyclic graph. In this graph, each node represents an instruction, and each edge represents a happens before relationship. We also assign weights to each node, representing their execution latency. Therefore, this race condition between the branch and the leakage instructions can be represented by this graph property, which is max path weight of the branch instruction minus the max path weight of the secret leakage instruction. The max path of the branch is marked in brown, representing the time needed for the branch to resolve, while the max path of the secret leakage is marked in blue, representing the time needed for the secret to be leaked. We call this timing condition index. The larger the timing condition index, the more likely the attack will succeed. With this modeling, we then simulate the strong winnowing power we mentioned earlier. So with the strong winnowing capability we mentioned earlier, there's two possible operations the attacker can perform to affect the timing of this gadget. One is cache eviction of the boundary value, and two is the division unit contention. As a result, there's 4 possible attack patterns as combinations of the 2 possible operations. We evaluate the effectiveness of each one of these attack patterns by analyzing how much they can increase the timing condition index. For example, if the attacker performs a cache eviction of the boundary value, the latency of the load instruction will get increased by hundreds of cycles. And this would change the max path of the branch instruction and increases the timing condition index by around 200. We perform the same analysis for all the attack patterns, and we select the most effective one. Finally, we measure the exploitability of gadgets based on their timing condition. We simulate the previously selected attack pattern with software instrumentation. We run the gadget on real machine and measure their timings. After we get enough samples, we calculate a vulnerability score based on how likely the leakage can happen before the misprediction recovery. For this gadget, it gets a score of 10 out of 10, meaning that it's highly exploitable. Finally, we implement our method and evaluate it on 6 security-centric applications and Linux kernel. We first run state-of-the-art scanners on these applications to get gadgets with vulnerable information flow. Then we run our tool on these gadgets to see how many of them are truly exploitable in practice. We present our result in this table. On the x-axis is the different vulnerability score from 0 to 10. On the y-axis is the number of gadgets in each bucket. As you can see, Our tool effectively identified around 500 gadgets as unexploitable due to their timing condition. We also identified around 70% of gadgets with varied exploitability from 1 to 8. Only around 20% of all gadgets are highly exploitable. We further investigate into the performance improvement by removing the patch on those unexploitable gadgets. We patch those gadgets by inserting L-fence instructions into the gadget to serialize the execution. We normalize the performance relative to the software without any patching. We noticed that if we apply patching to every single branch instruction, that would result in a slowdown of over 5 times. State-of-the-art works reduce this number by around 50% by accurately modeling their vulnerable information flow. Our tool reduces this number further by 20% by accurately modeling the timing condition. In conclusion, we propose GadgetMeter, which quantify timing condition under a simulated attacker with strong windowing power. With this tool, we generate an exploitability report of all gadgets, which reduces the false positives of existing works and provides a quantitative evaluation result. Thank you for listening. Now I'll open the floor for questions.
Thank you for the speaker. Any questions? Okay. So your this method based on this cache, one technique is cache eviction. How easily to perform this for attacker to do this cache eviction?
Yes, so there's a lot of techniques proposed in previous attack works that try to do cache eviction like on the same machine, right? So there's a lot of techniques like I can go through them one by one, but basically the attacker has just to run a program on either the same physical machine or on the same CPU core to perform the cache eviction. They just perform a lot of memory accesses to evict the data of the victim program out of cache. So yeah, so that's not the focus on our work, but there's plenty of work demonstrating this is a very strong attacker capabilities and it's easy to conduct.
Yeah, I mean, so some cases it's maybe very challenging for attacker to do this eviction, right? Cache eviction.
Yes, so in our work, we just assume that the attacker has this capability to evict whatever data they want. Yeah, that's our assumption here.
Okay. Oh, great work. Question? Yes,
question.
please.
So I might have missed this, but after you did your analysis on how costly commands are and how the attacker can influence the timing, you did some measurement. Can you say what measurement provided that could not be done through your analysis?
Okay, sorry, I didn't really get you.
So you measured, like after you explained the, how you identified the attackers with the strong capability to influence timing, you also did some measurement to see if these gadgets were exploitable. And I missed what the measurement provided that you couldn't get from your previous analysis.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So, so first, like in our second step, we try to evaluate the effectiveness of different attack patterns, and we select the most effective one. And in the final step, we simulate that attack pattern and run it on real machine to measure how effective it truly is and whether the gadget is exploitable under this most effective attack pattern.
Right. So what I'm missing is what does that simulation, like what did you fail to model so that the simulation provided like, oh, you thought this was exploitable, but in fact it's not?
Yes. So basically, with the static analysis, we can only conclude on which attack pattern is the most effective one among all the others, but we cannot conclude whether the gadget is exploitable at all under this most effective attack pattern. We still need that bit information. We can only get that during runtime analysis because it's very hard to do accurate static analysis and reason about the program execution time. So,
okay, so is it the microarchitecture of the machine that is the unknown in the modeling?
Yes, so those are very hard to model statically.
Okay, and would other like types of microarchitectures, like if I execute on a different CPU, would it affect the conclusions?
Yes, absolutely. So the conclusion derived from one run is just specific to this target machine. In order to get accurate result for another machine, it's better to run the same experiment on the other machine. However, our method is very lightweight. As you can see, most of our work is conducted at static time, and only the third step is performed at runtime. So that incurs very minimal runtime overhead. So yeah, so in short, so to get correct result, accurate result on another machine, you need to run it on the other machine, but that's really fast.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Also, thank you for the speaker.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, this is conclude this session. Thank you.